Hello and welcome back to the MCAT grind. This is Biology Chapter 7, the circulatory system. Now in the circulatory system, we have the simple structures of the heart that it is known in high school. You have the atriums, right and left, as well as the ventricles. And we know there are two valves. This one's tricuspid from the right atrium to the right ventricle. And from the left atrium to left ventricle, it's a bicuspid, or more commonly known as a mitral valve. And of course, you have your aorta that sends out from the left ventricle blood into the body, and between the left ventricle and the aorta, there's aortic valve, and between the right ventricle into the lungs, you have the pulmonary valve. All of the valves here, except for mitral valve, have 3 leaflets. And the next thing you will need to know is what shows on the EKG. On an EKG, will show the node, the SA node, sending out the electric signals for the heart pumping, and this is what's displayed: the P complex, or P and the QRS complex, and then the T. These waves denote certain contraction mechanisms. The P wave denotes when right before the atrium, both of the atriums are going to contract, so that sends out a little signal. And then when QRS signal is sent out, it basically is a hint that the ventricles are going to contract. So right before they contract, QRS complex. And during that, as they send that out, the left ventricle is going to contract, and you're going to have a really high left ventricular pressure before to force the blood through the aorta. At the same time, the mitral valve is going to close here. The tricuspid valve is going to close here, right? As this one send into the lungs, and the left ventricle is going to send into the body through the aorta. At the T wave, it's just going to repolarize and slowly build up back into the volume again. Now, these equations are cardiac output, which equals stroke volume, so the amount of volume of blood being sent out at a time, times heart rate. Heart rate could be 60 beats a minute, probably higher, 100 beats per minute, and then multiplied by stroke volume, and you get your cardiac output. Typically, display of your ventricular to your systolic pressure over your diastolic pressure. Systolic is when the ventriculars contract, is roughly about 100 over 60, or 120 over 80. That's like the general good range. This is your pressure differential. The pressure differential is measured by your cardiac output multiply your total peripheral resistance. Peripheral, think about everywhere else in your body, and resistance is either from the blood vessels and everything combined. Think about your body as in wires, and they resist the traveling of the blood. Now we also have the Bohr shift of oxygen being unloaded from your hemoglobin, your red blood cells. As we discussed earlier in the different chapters, your oxygen will be unloaded into the tissues. That's the whole point of the circulatory system, to unload the oxygen. And basically, at the tissues, they're going to have a lower oxygen concentration, the red blood cells, because they're delivering them into the tissues. But when you get back into the lungs, you're going to have a high 100% oxygen concentration. Now, Bohr shift basically says that O2 will be released more. This whole graph will be shifted to the right to release a lot more of the oxygen at the tissues. Why? Well, because there's more carbon dioxide. If you're exercising, more carbon dioxide in your body being produced as waste, higher temperature in your body, perhaps more pH because of more H ions, as because of the sodium bicarbonate buffer, and that's going to allow your body to upkeep with that waste removal and delivering of O2 to stimulate to help your muscles. Also, as we mentioned, fetal hemoglobin uptakes more oxygen than adults. So their shift will shift to the left because their hemoglobin wants to keep more oxygen. Now we also have the 3 different capillary beds to keep note of. Is a hepatic portal. Hepatic portal is where after the capillary beds at the tissue, they'll go join at near the liver to collect before going back up to the inferior vena cava into the right atrium. Hypophyseal is at the hypothalamus. That's where they pick up some hormones from the hypothalamus and deliver it to the anterior pituitary gland for a paracrine signaling. We also have renal portal, which is at the kidneys. After the capillary bed delivered all the oxygen, they will travel from the one of the arterioles. I think it's the efferent arterioles, right? Efferent arterioles, and go join a renal portal vein, renal portal system, and they will then after go into the inferior vena cava. So that's pretty much it for circulatory system. The rest you may have to see red blood types, as well as the different cells you may see, such as blood plasma concentrations or different types, but that will be discussed more into the immune system coming up next. Alright, that's it.